Ndala. Welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to speak on a basic element of the African spirituality and the African culture that I've been sharing on my channel. And I'm talking about the Bamileke tradition. It is very important that you understand that this is not a religion. I think I see a lot of comments sometimes, and some of you are new, so it's no foul, no blame. This is why I'm making this video, so you understand a little bit more clearly, especially if you haven't watched a lot of the videos that I've made on African spirituality. There are different spiritualities on the continent, okay? When I'm speaking of the Bamileke tradition, this is why oftentimes I use the word tradition or spirituality to explicitly let you know that it's different from religion. This is not a religion. We don't have a priest that tells us what to do, when to do certain things. We have some of the formal organization that is formal organization that is curtailed to specific spiritual tradition that is based at the cheffery. The cheffery or the chiefry is basically the spiritual center of every village. This is where some of the elders that have the knowledge, the spiritual knowledge, is transmitted for the community, transmitted from one elder to another. It's not something that you, an outsider, can just join or participate in. It's something that's completely closed, that's based on lineages and blood lineages, and that is meant to be able to retain the knowledge that we have from our ancestors and from our way of lives and traditions. Now, this is separate from the familiar tradition. So we have traditions that are linking us to the land where we were born, our native land, our motherland. This is why in our tradition, when you die somewhere else, your body is being returned to your native land. We have this tradition, this expectative that you will be returning to the land that see your birth, the land of your ancestors. So it isn't something that we do proselytization, because this is not what it is about. This channel is not about you joining in the Bamileke tradition. This channel is about you understanding certain things about our tradition, about my tradition, so you can see the things that are similar within yours, so you can have the courage to explore the things that are within the tradition that you are born, within the lineage that you are born, wherever you are. This is why if you are part of the diaspora, there is a tradition and a culture right where you are. There is an environment, there is a natural environment right where you are. And that environment, that natural environment, is part of you. Why? Because this is the land that saw your parents and your grandparents where they were born. So it is part of your legacy because your forefathers had their blood, sweat, and tears on that land. And so that land is tied to you, whether you want to accept it or not. And that land is also part of your birthright. And that means it is something that you cannot shake up or shake away from you. This is why every time somebody will ask you, where were you born? It's going to take you right back to the United States or to France or to whatever country you were born if you're a member of the diaspora. And you shouldn't be having any shame about that, because your forefather paved the way for you to be born there where they were born as well. And we've seen, if you look at history, or at least some of the history that has been documented, you see that there were black people all over the globe, all over the world. This is why you have a resonance wherever you're born and wherever your forefather, your parents, your grandparents were born. That land has a resonance with you. That particular country, what it's called, has a resonance with you, because that's where your lineage is tied to. So when you understand that religion is something that anyone can participate in. You can convert to religion, you can try to convince other people to convert, so forth and so on. You're spreading the word, you're telling whoever wants to hear it about whatever religion you're part of. That has nothing to do with the African spirituality or African tradition at all. We don't go around asking people to join our way of life. You can't even join our way of life because you're not even part of it. You're not part of the environment. The environment is not the same as the one where you are. So it's not going to be conducive for you to be exactly as we are. The same way for people who leave the native land or who leave the village, wherever they go, even if they want to continue in the tradition, they have to tweak and change things because the environment that they are in is different. This is why when you see Black people who left Africa and went other places, they developed a brand new language. Not because they necessarily forgot about the language of their forefather, but because there are new things in the environment that didn't even exist where they were. And I'm not talking about necessarily the slave trade where you say, oh, you were ripped off the native language and all of the stuff. I'm even talking about even within the Bamileke tradition, the elder, not the elder, but the child who's not the successor, who doesn't have the spiritual inheritance of the entire family and the responsibility to do certain communion with the ancestors. The children who are not who don't receive the responsibility are left to go on, and many of them, like I say, if they don't agree with the village, they don't agree with the rules or the tradition and want to do something else, they are told to leave. If you don't want to obey by the rules of the village, then you need to leave. You need to go on. You're going to go somewhere else. And many of them did. They went somewhere else to a different environment. They went further. They walked. They took whoever wanted to go with them and whatever they had, and they started their own village. And oftentimes in that village, the language is no longer the same. Because of the way you start pronouncing things differently, you start seeing things that didn't exist in your other village. New plants, different environment, sometimes different animals. This is why, for example, in Cameroon is very particular because we have the desert in the north, we have the tropical rainforest, two environments that are completely different. So the reality and the experience that you have in these two different places are going to be completely different. And you have sacred sites in all kind of environment with different type of spirits. So that's why the spirituality is not going to be the same. The language is not going to be the same. The language has to evolve with the environment. This is why I often stress that African spirituality and African culture is ecological. It is based on the environment where you are. And that's why you cannot find two of the same all over the place in Africa, because the environment is never two of the same, even though there are similarities. And the similarities are the foundation of the roots of the traditions. That's why everywhere you go, family is the unit that's at the center of the community. That's important. The complementarity of between men and women is essential and is important. And you will find that everywhere. Now, how you do the rite of marriage and the rite of passage is going to be different everywhere you go because the environment is different. And this is something you need to understand. If you're coming with a religious mind, you're not going to understand this. If you're looking at a Bible that's applicable anywhere and anything, you're not going to find it. African spirituality and African culture are oral tradition. There are reasons for that. We let the wind carry our words and our thoughts and our pattern throughout the universe. We do not need to crystallize them in books. And it's important to understand that element. You cannot convert to the Bamileke tradition or any tradition, African tradition for that matter. That's what you need to understand. And you shouldn't even be aspiring to before you even want to do something like that. Before you even do that, you need to first look at the own tradition where you're coming from. And no matter who you are, you're coming from a specific tradition. You may not like it. You may not like what your forefather were doing or your parents or your grandparents were doing, but you come and you're part of that tradition. And it becomes your responsibility to improve the tradition. If it wasn't righteous, if you come from a family where people were into drugs or in killing and stuff like that, it is your responsibility to change that by you not being involved in those kind of things. That's how you redeem the ancestor, by breaking off this vicious circle, by doing better than they did. And that's a responsibility for everyone in any tradition in this world. You have to do better than your forefather. You have to do better than your parents. Criticizing your parents is not enough. You have to do better. And in doing better, you have the ability today to gain information, to have access, and to seek out elders and other people who are able to support you on that particular path. Moving to Africa with the same mindset that you had in the United States is not going to help you. If you move to a different place, you have to adapt to the different places. And we see that all the time. People leaving New York to go live in India, or leaving China to go other places, living in France to go back to Africa. And you go into the place that's calling you, and you know that you cannot live in that place the same way you were living somewhere else. You have to change yourself, you have to transform, you have to grow. And this is why I always say that there is no spiritual growth without personal growth. You cannot aspire to grow spiritually if you're not willing to grow personally, if you're not willing to improve your character, to work on your morality. Morality is part of it, and to work on the path where the divine is working right beside you, and where you aspire to be righteous and you aspire to do better every single day. And of course, as part of that, I've had a series on the principle of Ma'at. And those principles, that series is geared towards helping you on a daily basis work on aspects of your character, aspects of who you are, to help you improve. And all of that required energy and required doing. Listening to a video is nice, reading books is nice, but all of that does not matter until you start applying it on a daily basis within your life. African spirituality is a living tradition. It isn't something that's crystallized in a book and that you read over and over and over. It requires you to implement the knowledge, the wisdom that has been passed on to you by your forefathers. It requires you to look around and to use your discernment in things that are being offered, invitations that are being given to you, things that are being proposed, way of life that are different. All of that, you have always to use your own discernment, which requires you to think not just with your brain, but with your heart and with your soul. So it is not an easy task. So stop aspiring of joining this particular tradition, that particular tradition, before you take the time to learn and connect with your own. Stop looking across the ocean, stop looking at people across the world, but start looking at your own family. Start seeking and being willing to understand them, to see what needs to be changed, but also to be looking for the good things, the things that are part of your tradition that you need to keep up, that you need to keep on, that you need to carry on. One of those things that I've seen that I find amazing, and that's exactly part of the ways that we do also have in our traditional ways, is, for example, the family reunion in the United States. African Americans have what they call the cookout, which is basically the same spiritual principle where you reunite with the family, the extended family. I've been to a cookout where people come from across the country just to be together again with their family for a few days or a week. And it is an immense spiritual communion where you get to hear about and learn and meet cousins and people that you may not have seen the entire year, and that you get to discuss family affairs on a macro level. And that spiritual principle is something that was embedded in your DNA, something that people kept doing, not because they needed to be tied in or because they were lost, because on the contrary, you are not lost. Everything that you need is within yourself if you only let yourself explore yourself and be open to find those treasures that are within you and that have been passed on. Not just the bad has been passed on, but the good. A lot of the good has been passed on, and that's what you should start focusing on. Your parents may not have given you this or that, but they sure did give you some of the things that are positive. And one of those things is the fact that you are here. They were able to come together, so you are here. At the very least, they gave you life. They gave you that breath. They gave you that body that you're right now inhabiting. So this is an invitation for you to understand that the Bamileke tradition or any spiritual or cultural African tradition is not there for your consumption. It's not there for you to consume it and abuse it. It's not there to be just regurgitated. You listen here and then you run off somewhere else and you repeat what you've heard in a mechanical way. It's there to give you perspective so you can look at your own tradition, you can look at your own way of being, because that's what a tradition is. It's a way of being. And that you can assess how you can improve in that way of being by looking at what your parents have provided for you, your grandparents have given you, who they were, and assessing from that heritage, what is there that you can use to keep going and bettering yourself? And what are the things that they didn't do so well, or that they did that were bad, so you can make sure that you don't do those things yourself, and that you don't pass on those things to your children. It is something that requires commitment, that it requires you to do a lot of work. Everyone here has to do work. And acknowledging that your parent didn't give you this or didn't do that, that's not doing work. That's just acknowledging. The work starts when you start lifting up your sleeves and actually doing something. Not just listening to videos, not just hearing this and that, not just speaking about it, but actually doing something about it. You free yourself by your willingness to change, by changing, by doing something different. And of course, not just doing anything different, by using wisdom and discernment along the way. And my channel here is trying, the attempt and the intention here is to help you have some of those tools that can guide you and help you along that path, along that way, on your own path. Some of you are Bamileke, some of you are coming from all over the world and you're trying to better understand your own tradition, and that's fine because you're already part of the tradition. For those of you who are not Bamileke, who are not born in the Bamileke tradition, who found this channel because you're seeking more information or you're seeking ways of understanding African traditional spirituality, or you are inclined to return to that, for you, the content of this channel is for you to look at the different subjects that are being touched upon, and to see in your own tradition, your own family, how those things have manifested. And you'll see in the comment section in many videos, you have African Americans or people from the part of the diaspora, or even from other different African countries, that are seeing some of the similarities within their own family of what I'm speaking about. So no need to jump over here to want to be Bamileke or anything like that if that's not part of your tradition already. You don't need to do that. You have a tradition of your own that is also rich, that you don't need to jump over here for, until you understand and already know about your own tradition, about your own family. And this is why, for those of you that think that your parents are no good and didn't give you anything and everybody is dysfunctional, etc., I say, now that you've assessed the bad and the dark in your family, sit down and take the time to assess the good. And like I said, all of you have something good. And the one thing that you all have that is good is the fact that your parents, no matter what they managed to do, or your grandparents, they managed to do one thing right. That's why you are here. And you all have that in common. You all have that in common. There is some goodness in your lineage. It's your responsibility to find the rest of it, and to enhance it, to magnify it, to nurture it. Look at the aspect of the tradition, your family tradition, and if you don't see any on your parents, go to your grandparents, go look at historical records, go seek out in all of the ways that are available to you. This is why on this channel we talk about learning about your parents, learning about your ancestors, learning about what your name came from, who wore that name before you, who did your parents call you after. But we also talk about dreams and how you can use your dream to gain information, to gain insight that you can apply in your day-to-day life. All of that does not matter if you're not actively every day seeking to make the best decision, to use your discernment and to improve and do better than you did yesterday. And even when you do mistakes and you fell down, that you have the willingness and your understanding that you can always get up and do better. It's never too late to do good. It's never too late to improve. It's never too late to do anything and be the person that you ought to be, that you owe to your own self, but also that you owe to your family, your village, and your community. And as you do that, beloved, I promise you that the people that are there to support you and that will help you and will guide you along the way will come into your space, will come into your life. But you have to meet them halfway. You have to start doing the work. and go beyond listening, go beyond speaking and ranting, and start making those small changes within your own life. It isn't the world or others that need to change, it is you.